Cozy Corner of Cinema. This is episode number 207, being recorded on Wednesday, March 18th, 2026. Well, the Academy Awards were this past Sunday, and now is a great time to be discussing with colleagues and acquaintances about the wins, the losses, the snubs, or anything of the sort. It's always fun watching them. I mean, you can't really take them too seriously, and it's one of these things where you can sort of harbor on and talk about, oh, well, the Academy Awards, they, this and that. I found myself uh, more than once, you bringing up the Academy Awards and almost this hostile response that gives, I'm not watching the Academy Awards. It's like you tell people, about the Super Bowl. It's like, I'm not watching the Super Bowl. And it's almost like a reactionary sort of gut, reaction where it's like, I'm not watching it because of X, Y, Z. And that's your prerogative. That's your right. But I've heard more discord about sort of not watching it or not being a part of it as taking a almost stand in a way of just saying that you don't care about something, but then you're harboring on it, or harping on it, I should say. I've been hearing a lot of that. But I watched it, and it's what it is every year. There is always that point in the middle of the show where you're sitting there, and you're thinking. Actually, let me rephrase that. It's really towards the end of the show. I would say maybe when you have you're about a couple hours in. If the end time says 10:30 and it is 10, and they still have 4 or 5 more awards to go to, then there is that moment where you go, my gosh, they really got to hurry this up because it's every year feels like there's such a leisurely pace, in time for skits and jokes and, of course, the speeches, which, I end up kind of just tuning out to a lot of that. I end up kind of just doing something else. It's more about like, you're watching it and you're going, what's going to be announced next? There's the nomination and there's the winner. And then there you go. I don't really care about the speeches or anything like that. It doesn't. I don't even think twice about that sort of thing. But yeah, at a certain point you go, my gosh, they still have X amount of awards to get to, and I have work in the morning, and so I'm watching it, and so they get through the big ones towards the end. Best actor, best picture, of course. Which seemed to be a bit of a split in terms of general sort of predictions on the best picture. It seemed as though the two front runners were either One Battle After Another or Sinners, and of course, One Battle After Another won Paul Thomas Anderson his first Best Picture Academy Award. And it's a situation that makes, when looking at the nominations, the situation is that I'm reminded how I think they desperately need to go back to about 5 nominations. 10 is, I think, a bit exaggerated if everything else has about 10. I know that the Best Picture is the win. That is the opus. That is the crown above the rest of the Academy Awards. But you're watching it and you got to think, does anyone really think that Frankenstein or F1 were going to go home with the Best Picture award, or Bugonia? It just wasn't going to happen. There were a couple front runners, I think, at one point, but I think narrowing that down to 5. I mean, if you took these 5, I would say the 5 that would have the most discussion in terms of what could win would be, off the top of my head, maybe One Battle After Another, Sinners, Marty Supreme, Sentimental Value, and Hamnet. I feel like if it was those 5 nominated, you could have a good conversation about what could be likely to win. In terms of, I mean, Train Dreams, it wasn't going to win. There was no chance it was going to win. Frankenstein, there was no chance. It was The Secret Agent. I mean, especially when you have Sentimental Value and The Secret Agent, both in the Best International Films category, then it comes down to the other 3 films they don't even have a chance. It's just a matter of, will Sentimental Value or The Secret Agent get it? I mean, there was no shot that Sarat or The Voice of Hind Rajab or what was the other film that was nominated? Oh boy, now that I'm recording, I can't remember it. but it was one that I did like. Oh my gosh, somebody's probably yelling at it right now. It's this, it's this. Um, it was just an accident. Oh my gosh, that was one of the highlights of last year, and I forgot it. Gosh, but either way, yeah, it's this year. I really didn't have any dog in the fight, so to speak. There were a couple of films that I was enthusiastic about that I knew weren't going to walk away with much, if anything, in terms of the leading kind of films. I mean, Hamnet, Sentimental Value, and Begonia were of the three. Those three, I would say, of the 10 were the only three that I not only really liked, but I thought were great. The rest I talked about on the episode I recorded with my girlfriend. I have my opinions on some of the other films nominated, but ultimately, it's a year like this. I just don't feel that strongly about a lot of these films. So, whether one battle after another, a film that I was generally indifferent on, it's fine for what it is, and then Sinners, which I just outright didn't like. I thought it was a uh, very childish film. It's a film that these two films were, you know, people were talking about them. They were critical successes, financial. Well, Sinners was a financial success. One battle after another. There was no chance they put their money in thinking they were going to get that back. It just wasn't going to happen. But overall, I mean, I knew that these were the films that were going to get the big kind of talk. But even last year as well. Last year, I feel like even much more aggressively, maybe not aggressive, much more seriously, I would say I had even less kind of stakes in it. Not that you ever really have stakes in it. After all, these are just the Academy Awards. But ultimately, it's fun to root for a film, or it's fun to root for a performance, or anything of the sort. But there was nothing really this year that I was like, ah, man, that's a real bummer. Or, it was more so of a case where, yeah, I mean, you kind of predicted a lot of it. Stellan Skarsgård, I was hoping was gonna walk away with the Best Supporting Actor. He did not. That went to Sean Penn. The only one that I thought I really scratched my head at, where I wonder what the thought process was funnily enough, Best Cinematography. I thought that was pretty clear. It should have went to Train Dreams. That's such a gorgeous looking film. Even the shots they were showing, I was sitting there going, yeah, it's got to be Train Dreams. Although I think I may have actually put down Sinners as my predicted, just because when a film gets nominated that much, they're going to be giving it a lot more than perhaps you would expect. So something like cinematography, it's a very it's a well shot film. I mean, it looks great. Those IMAX cameras are gorgeous, but so much of it takes place in this one location that I think the cinematography kind of rests itself at a certain point of the look of the film. Whereas something like Train Dreams, you have all these different exteriors and you have a lot of low lights, even more so than Sinners. I think kind of shows up more for what it is. But overall, they're always fun to watch. They're always fun to discuss. And then it makes you, it wraps up. It officially wraps up that film year. So you can look back at 2025 and you can say One Battle After Another was the film that was representative of that year. And even more so than the nominations. I guess you could, go and look at previous year's nominations and go, okay, well, that's the film of, these are the films of the moment. And you would be correct. But I think so many films get nominated. There's so much that is put into it. I mean, is anybody really going to say that Jurassic World Rebirth was one of the faces of 2025? I mean, it was. You could say so. You could say that, but I think that'd be an exaggeration. I don't think I even know many people who saw Jurassic World Rebirth. I certainly wasn't going to sit through it. But either way, that's what it was. I mean, that's what it is. And it makes you kind of think about, or at least I was thinking about it afterwards, sort of the state of, gosh, a lot of these films that are being released to the general public. And I feel like there's not that water cooler conversation of a film. I mean, I think as film fans, we talk to people who are on the same page, so we're aware of a lot of these films of one battle after another, or even something like let's pull it back. Let's pull it to something like Bugonia or like The Secret Agent. We know about these films, but is it in the general kind of conversation? And you could exclude The Secret Agent because that is a Brazilian film, that's an international film. Okay, that's a fair argument, and that's fine. There are, plenty of people just don't want to watch subtitled films. That's their prerogative. There's no right or wrong way to enjoy art. But like Bugonia, for example, if I ask someone on the street, hey, have you heard of this film? Chances are I don't. I'd be surprised. I think because the theater experience, the theatrical experience, is not what it was. Even 10 years ago, where it was such a thing, such a big thing to see a new film. Even I remember, even in 2019, even a general audience being aware of something like Parasite, which was a massive film, but it's a massive South Korean film. So, people who normally weren't watching international films, weren't watching subtitled films, they at least knew about Parasite. They go, okay, what is this big film? And I think in part of that, you could say, well, is that a symptom of the theatrical experience? I mean, I don't even think that was a wide release film. I mean, it played near me, but were all of the Cinemarks and all of the AMC's showing this, or the Regals, or Showcase Cinemas? I don't think so. I mean, but now more so. I mean, excuse me. I was having a discussion recently with someone. I was killing time before a film. I was having a beer or two, and just someone I didn't even know, just a casual acquaintance. We just started talking, and we were talking about movies, and they were, I just generally asked like, hey, have you seen, anything good lately? Have you watched anything? And the only new movie that came to mind of theirs was, yeah, I heard that Hamnet movie was pretty good, but I haven't seen it. And keep in mind, this was when it's been out for a while. This is when it's been known. So it's like, I don't think the general public cares or really knows about this, about these. It's not, these films are not a cultural kind of landmark, a kind of cultural touchstone where everyone, you go into school or you go into work and someone says like, oh man, have you seen this? I mean, I guess that art form has been replaced maybe by video games or something. And I remember in school, when I was in school, people were coming in when the new Grand Theft Auto was out. Everyone was talking. No one was talking about the new releases that week. They were talking about the new Grand Theft Auto video game, and or even just other video games, or like literature. I think is by the wayside. People are not, that sort of cultural, that book that everyone is reading. If I'm, maybe I'm just not in the sphere of it all, and I'm willing to admit, ignorance on that I'm just not knowledgeable. But I think it's just a different kind of landscape without people sort of take in their art. In this case, for films, I just don't see it being what it once was. And that's not to say that it's not transforming into something else. Streaming, I think, has a huge part in that, of just people, not wanting to go to the cinema or not being interested in certain kinds of films. Even something like Train Dreams, for example, which is a Netflix film. It makes you wonder, if a Joe Schmo is kind of coming across it and, okay, Academy Award nomination. Okay, well, what is this? Oh, it's kind of a slow, very artful film. I'll just turn it off. What do I got to lose? I watched it for 20 minutes. I moved on. And I think I talked about that before when I was discussing when Ben Affleck and Matt Damon were talking about their new film, The Rip, and all the proclivities that come with putting it on Netflix. These sort of devaluing of films and the casualness at which there is no risk besides losing time. And I've always been adamant. If I start a film, I'm gonna finish it. If I have to pause it and go to bed or whatever, it's the only times I haven't finished a film is if I was having an issue with where I was streaming it, or it was a case where I'm just trying to chill out and watch something. or if I'm having like a couple of drinks or something like that, I'm not trying to watch anything too heady. So sometimes you put something on and you're like, I don't think I can appreciate this right now. Maybe I'll come back to this. Maybe I won't. But I think that if I watch this in the state that I am now, not even particularly under the influence, but if you're just, like if you're on an airplane or something, you're trying to watch something very, very quiet and moving, and that might not be the best situation, which I've been guilty of. I was actually guilty of that fairly recently. I was on a plane coming back from a couple states over, and I decided to watch, and God bless my girlfriend for watching it with me when she did not have to, but we were. On the in-flight tuck screens, they have like a bunch of movies and stuff, and there was a new film. I think it was an Italian film, Vermiglio. I don't know how to say the title, but it's a very quiet, a very slow film, and that's a film that I thought was excellent. But as I'm watching it, I am more than aware that I am not fully appreciating it. And at this point, I was halfway through. So you have two options. One, you come back to it and maybe you even restart it, or two, you try to when I say wait it out, I don't mean wait it out as if you're just waiting for it to be done, but you're in this, so you might as well go through with it. And I don't know if there was a wrong answer, truthfully, but I did watch it and I thought it was fantastic. But I had to apologize to her because I realized I probably should have picked something far more. I don't want to say casual because that sounds like it's putting down another kind of film, but maybe something more comedic, or maybe something where you have an action film where, yeah, there's a plot there, you can follow it, but you can also just kind of watch these sort of high octane sequences, So, context is everything for where you see a film. You want to watch if I'm watching a quiet, slow film, you want to watch that in a dark room. You want to watch that in a theater. You want to watch that where you're not going to have a lot of distractions of pets or, you got neighbors or you got whatever, fans going off, heaters going off. And, this kind of spiraled into something else altogether, but just sitting here now talking about kind of where the film experience is going made me think of that. Yeah, it's it's the same thing as somebody's like, I watched whatever Lawrence of Arabia on my phone, and you go, hey man, that's all you. There's some films I'm just like, man, I don't get that at all. But like I said, art can be interpreted in so many different ways and so many different capacities that a big part of one's reaction is the environment they see it in. Definitely, I always remember Roger Ebert, his scathing review of "I Spit on Your Grave," and I think a big part of that review, the 1974 film, I should say, was it 74? I just threw that number out without even thinking twice about it. Let me look that up. I think it is 70, either because there was a remake that it came out right before he passed away. I Spit on Your Grave, 19. It keeps giving me the 2010 one. 1978. I was wrong, but at least I corrected myself. Anyways, let me have a sip of this coffee. We'll continue talking. Anyways, but I always remember that he he had a very dismissive, very negative review of the 1978 "I Spit on Your Grave," a very famous horror film starring Camille Keaton. She goes out into the woods in Connecticut or I don't know if I believe it takes place in Connecticut. I know it's filmed in Connecticut. It's actually filmed not too far from me. But anyways, she is out at a cabin to do some writing. She is assaulted by this group of men, and they leave her for dead. But she is on a mission to get her revenge. It's a very aggressive film. It's a very sad film. But I think it's a film that has been, you know what, a smarter man than I, Mr. Joe Bob Briggs. He can talk. If any of you have that Anchor Bay Blu-ray or that Anchor Bay DVD, I don't know if it's on the newer versions, but Joe Bob Briggs has a commentary on that, and that is one of the best commentaries I've ever listened to for any film. He addresses the controversies, he addresses the complaints, and he puts it so eloquently and so thoughtfully that I'd be doing him a disservice to try to talk for him. So, but anyways, really going off topic here. But Roger Ebert had a very negative experience seeing that film. He said that he claimed that people in the theater were cheering during the assault sequences, which is, I mean, that's upsetting in its own right for any film. Even if it's a critically acclaimed film where you have these sequences of a woman being sexually assaulted, if people are reacting positively, then that can be enough for anyone to react negatively to the film. And he gave it a very scathing review. It was a very controversial film when it came out. I think it's a really fantastic film. It's a film that, I believe gets stronger on repeated viewings, which is not a film you would immediately think to watch again and again. But sometimes it's just those films that really kind of leave that are just so harsh that make you go like, man, I really gotta, take this all in. But anyways, and Roger Ebert was very critical of a lot of horror films. Kind of had this reputation, I think, in the '80s of being against a lot of these slashers and a lot of these, Friday the 13th type films like Maniac. Him and Gene Siskel very very famously against. But so you could say that, oh well, he wasn't going to like the film anyways. But I think people forget that Roger Ebert gave a positive review to Wes Craven's Last House on the Left, 1972. Which is one of my favorite films. And that's a film as well that has really grisly, really upsetting sequences of sexual assault, but it's done so realistically in a way that doesn't feel exploitive. It feels almost like a documentary. The way they're shooting that low, like I don't even know, like those 16 millimeter, I guess. I don't even know what it was shot on. I actually have a book about the making of the film that is over in the corner that I'm not going to grab, but it has this gritty, very gritty realism, almost kind of like one of these accident films you watch in school or something like that back in like the 70s or 80s of just like, a PSA on dangers of like, the city life or dangers of, going out on your own and these people you encounter. But yeah, it's another one of these types of films that you're dealing with such a grim and serious subject like assault that if you're watching that film in a theater and people are clapping or cheering, then that's gonna just leave a bad taste in your mouth, and you're gonna say, well, this film is just cheering us on, and that can blind judgment. I think nobody is prone to unbiasedness. If you see a film in a good environment, if you maybe you don't like the director already, and you're like, I don't like this film because I don't like this director, or you love a director and you're like, I'm gonna love this film because of that director. I think that all happens instinctually. Same thing with a band. Let's say a band you love puts out a really bad album, and I think we've all been there. I know I certainly have. Of like a band I love, they put out an album that's just not good, and it takes time for you to be like, yeah, it's just not good. Or a film that you're looking forward to, or like you have high hopes for a film, and then it really kind of lets you down, or it disappoints you, or God forbid it's even bad. Which is why when it comes to these types of these, they say critical darlings, these Oscar kind of darlings, it's important to watch it with all of that removed. I don't want hype on a film. I don't want any kind of talk on a film. I don't look at Rotten Tomatoes. I don't. I look at will hear my acquaintance have to say about a film, but if I like a film, I like the film. I don't, or if I don't like the film, I don't like the film. I talked before. I don't like Sinners. I really don't like that film, but it is a critical and financial and a success. It's an Oscar, Academy Award winner, and that is great, But I think if I hadn't seen the film and I had known all of that going in, then it would almost be like you really have to kind of block that out. Because in a case like that, I was hearing about, okay, this is a new film that's getting good reviews. But whatever it is, it's just about watching it with a fresh, open mind and not succumbing to whatever the societal reaction is. Or in some cases, you do end up falling with the majority. And of course, that happens quite a bit as well. But I'm kind of trailing off here, going into different things. We started talking about the Academy Awards, then we get into I Spit on Your Grave, which is the furthest thing from getting an Academy Award, and Last House on the Left, and I kind of went off on this whole sort of thing there. But these films, they bring to mind. I'm going to go completely off topic here. Maybe not completely off topic. We're going to focus on that whole wave of the 70s and 80s rape revenge films. A lot of them were good, a lot of them were not. On the heels of something like Last House on the Left and I Spit on Your Grave, these massive, controversial films. They're part of the Video Nasty series. They're being censored and edited, and they're such grisly films. You got this whole wave of films. I always think about one like the Night Train Murders, which is it's very funny watching that film. Well, it's not very funny watching that film. It's a pretty horrific film, but it's funny. The first time that I watched it, I thought, man, this is pretty similar to Last House on the Left. I mean, this is like identical. It's just on a train, only to find out that this is just directly a ripoff of Last House on the Left. It is so much so that the other title is Last Stop on the Night Train, directed by Aldo Lotto, and it's just ridiculous. I mean, I think it technically counts as a Christmas film as well. These girls, they're going on a train back home to see one of the girls' parents, and they end up getting involved with some of these people on on a train, and then, well, you know what happens, and then what happens with the parents? Well, just take a wild guess if you know the story. It's one that always stood out to me when it comes to these ripoffs, these Last House on the Left ripoffs. And even the titles they were using, not even necessarily taking the same kind of plot of Last House on the Left, but even the titles, you get films films that were using the tagline, the great tagline of Last House on the Left, which, to avoid fainting, keep repeating, it's only a movie, only a movie. It's such a great tagline. You watch that trailer and you have this echoing, haunting voice of people in unison chanting, it's only a movie, only a movie. I remember when I was younger, it gave me chills just hearing it. It gave this whole kind of aura around the film. I remember, it was the first, I saw that film at a young age. The first time I saw it, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is going to be the scariest movie I've ever seen in my life. And it wasn't scary. It was more just like powerful. Like, wow, this is and now of course we have these new beautiful HD transfers and restorations, and Wes Craven is he's so directly tied to that a lot of that mystique is gone. And when I say mystique, I mean more so for myself. Obviously, I'm not old enough where I had seen it when it came out. I was not alive in the 1970s, but I really didn't know much about. I didn't know who David Hess was. I really didn't know much about Wes Craven, so I just saw this trailer. I'm like, what is this? This looks like the scariest movie ever. But then you had films like Roger Watkins' Last House on Dead End Street, aka The Cuckoo Clocks from Hell, which, I mean, that you look at the poster and it's just like the whole taking all their cues to Last House on the Left. And I've seen that film once. I don't even think they're in a house in that film. I think they're in like a warehouse or something. It's got some good ambience in that film. It's got some good chilly moments. And famously, that's a film that there's so much footage of that is just gone. I mean, Roger Watkins became, in my opinion, one of the strongest adult film directors doing Corruption with Jamie Gillis. I actually have a poster of that in the other room I have framed, and Her Name Was Lisa. It's a very mean-spirited film. Roger Watkins is such a talented filmmaker. But yeah, Last House on Dead End Street. And then you have House on the Edge of the Park by Ruggiero Deodato, and which is it's a rape revenge sort of film in its own right. And as well, it's a very good film too. There's some great dancing in that movie, and then you got David Hess from Last House on the Left in that. Some real great emotional moment in that between him and Giovanni Radici, and man, that's just a good film with with a reveal that may or may not make any sense. I was listening to somebody talk about it, and they explained why it didn't make any sense, and I went, you know what, you might be right about that in terms of what we've seen in the film. But I'm gonna wrap this episode up. We started talking about the Academy Awards, ended off with rape revenge films. I didn't see it coming, but anyways, I hope you guys are all doing extremely well. Days are getting a little bit chillier, but we're going to have some nice cool days ahead of us, and there's so much work to be done. But don't let it overwhelm you, there's going to be things to get done one step at a time, one word at a time, making a film one scene at a time. Everything is just in doses, man. So take care of yourself, take care of your pets. I got to be taking care of these cats. They're driving me crazy, oh my gosh. And that'll do it for this episode. So take care, guys, and I'll be back next time.